All right, teachers, let's talk about teaching metaphors, one of the most powerful tools in a writer's toolkit. Metaphors don't just describe, they transform. They take the ordinary and make it extraordinary, turning simple ideas into vivid, unforgettable images. And today, we're going to use the delightfully eccentric story of Talon to show your students how to wield metaphors like literary wizards. Now, before we dive in, let's start with a quick definition. A metaphor is when we describe something by comparing it to something else, without using like or as. It's not just a comparison, it's a transformation. For example, instead of saying, she's creative, you might say, her mind is a kaleidoscope of ideas. See, it paints a picture, doesn't it? So how do we teach this to our students? Let's break it down step by step using Talon's story as our guide. Step 1. Start with the basics. What's a metaphor? Begin by explaining what a metaphor is in simple terms, a way to describe something by saying it is something else. But don't stop there. Give examples from the story. Here's a great one. Talon was as thin as a broomstick. No, scratch that, more like a broomstick forgotten in a dusty attic for a century. Now, technically, this starts as a simile, as thin as a broomstick, but it evolves into a metaphor when the broomstick becomes a symbol of Talon herself. The dusty attic adds layers to the metaphor, suggesting she's not just thin, but also neglected, forgotten, and maybe a bit peculiar. Ask your students, how does this metaphor help us picture Talon? What does it tell us about her personality? Encourage them to see how metaphors can go beyond physical descriptions to reveal deeper traits. Step 2. Show how metaphors add personality. Metaphors aren't just about describing appearances, they're about creating mood and tone. Let's look at another example from the story. Her wiry grey hair fizzled out in every direction, crackling like static, as if she'd stuck her finger in a light socket. Here, Talon's hair isn't just messy, it's electric. The metaphor transforms her into someone buzzing with energy, unpredictability, and maybe even a touch of madness. Ask your students, how does this metaphor make Talon more interesting? What kind of person might have hair like this? This is a great way to show them that metaphors can give characters personality, making them larger than life. Step 3. Practice turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. Now it's time for your students to try their hand at creating metaphors. Start with something simple. For example, ask them to describe Talon's cats using metaphors. Here are a few from the story to inspire them. Count Whiskerstein surveyed the world with the disdain of a retired Bond villain. Beans vibrated with nervous energy like a firecracker about to explode. These metaphors transform the cats into more than just animals, they're characters. Count Whiskerstein isn't just aloof, he's a villain. Beans isn't just nervous, he's ready to pop. Challenge your students. How would you describe Pudding, the orange tabby, or Smog, the grumpy Persian, using a metaphor? Encourage them to think about personality traits, not just appearances. Step 4. Use setting to inspire metaphors. Metaphors can also bring settings to life. In Talon's story, the house is described as so rickety it looked like it might sneeze itself into a pile of splinters. Here, the house isn't just old, it's alive. The metaphor gives it a personality, making it feel like a character in the story. Ask your students, what other metaphors could describe Talon's house? Is it a creaky ship in a storm? A tired old man leaning on a cane? This activity helps them see how metaphors can make even inanimate objects feel dynamic and engaging. Step 5. Connect metaphors to emotions. Metaphors aren't just about visuals, they're also about feelings. Let's revisit this line. She loathed children with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns. This metaphor doesn't just tell us Talon dislikes children, it makes us feel her hatred. The fiery passion of 1,000 suns is intense, almost comical, and it helps us understand just how deeply she feels. Ask your students, how could you use a metaphor to describe how Talon feels about her cats, or how the children feel about her? This is a great way to show them how metaphors can capture emotions, not just images. Step 6. Collaborative metaphor writing. Finally, let's bring it all together with a collaborative activity. Divide your class into small groups and give them a character, setting, or emotion from the story to describe using metaphors. For example, Group 1. Describe Talon's personality with metaphors. Group 2. Describe the chaos when the children arrive using metaphors. Group 3. Describe how the cats react to the children using metaphors. Once each group has created their metaphors, share them with the class. This not only sparks creativity, but also shows students how different perspectives can lead to wildly different metaphors. Step 7. Reflect and celebrate. Wrap up the lesson by reflecting on how metaphors transformed the story. Ask your students, how would the story feel different without metaphors? What did the metaphors add to the characters, the setting, and the mood? And don't forget to celebrate their work. Highlight some of their best metaphors and talk about what makes them effective. Positive reinforcement goes a long way in building confidence and creativity. Remember, teachers, metaphors are like magic. They take the ordinary and make it extraordinary. By teaching your students to use metaphors, you're giving them a tool to make their writing more vivid, engaging, and memorable. So start with talent and let their imaginations run wild. Who knows? You might just inspire the next great storyteller in your classroom. And if you're looking for more creative lesson ideas, head over to the Diamond Education Hub for resources tailored to help you bring out the best in your students. Happy teaching!